Matt Casey was a major player in Chicago Fire, so it was a real shock when it came out that he was on his way out. Fans adored him, and his relationship with Sylvie Brett became a huge part of the story. So his departure left many curious about what that meant for Sylvie, with many presuming that he might follow him out. That, of course, did not happen. Kara Killmer, who plays Sylvie, let everyone know why. So let's get into it. Is Matt Casey really gone from Chicago Fire for good? It's wild to think that Chicago Fire is currently undergoing season 11 without Matt Casey, effectively the main character for the longest time. He's been there since the start and naturally feels like an inseparable part of the show. But 10 seasons is a long time to commit to something, and it's understandable that after that long you might feel like things have run their course. That appears to be at least part of what happened with Jesse Spencer, the actor who played Casey, who opted to leave the show, or at the very least cease being a full-time cast member. And so his tenure as a frequent star of Chicago Fire ended partway through season 10, in the special 100th episode. In the episode, Matt makes the tough decision to move to Oregon to take care of the sons of Andrew Darden, a firefighter who lost his life in the pilot episode, the very beginning of the series. This came as a big shock, as his relationship with Sylvie Brett was one of the biggest hooks of the show, and they had just finally made themselves an official couple in the season 9 finale. The relationship isn't over per se, but it is now going through a bit of a challenge because now they're a long-distance couple, something that many in the real world have found extremely difficult to maintain for a lengthy period of time. The reasons cited are multiple, as he had some personal reasons, talking about having family that he needed to take care of, as well as simply wanting to do other things after having spent such a long time on the one show, and having it dominate so much of his time. When the news broke that the character would be written off, many wondered if the same would be true for Kara Killmer's Sylvie Brett, since the two seemed to be attached at the hip at that point. The two of them seemed like an endgame couple, the one true pairing of the series that would for sure still be together when the show wrapped up. But of course, that didn't happen. As to whether or not he's gone for good, that'd be maybe a little dramatic. He did make a return in the next season for a single episode, for the wedding of Kelly Severide and Stella Kidd. However, when he came back, he still made it clear that he loved his new life in Oregon and didn't seem keen on moving back to Chicago anytime soon. And the name of the show isn't Portland Fire. I'm sure Portland, Oregon is a fine city, but the name doesn't roll off the tongue in quite the same way. While he's hinted at the possibility of a real return in interviews, at the moment Jesse Spencer isn't a full-time cast member, and if that's going to change, it probably won't be until after season 11. And who knows what Casey and Brett's relationship will look like by the time we get there. So what did Kara Killmer have to say about the departure and her character staying behind? Despite how close the two were, ultimately when Matt Casey made the decision to move to Oregon, Sylvie Brett opted to stick right where she was. So some might wonder, why? I mean, certainly a lot of people at least considered the possibility that she might be leaving alongside him, but obviously that didn't happen. So what does her actress, Kara Killmer, have to say about that? Well, she recently took part in an interview with the One Chicago Day and talked about why her character opted to stay. During this talk, she explained that she believes that it can actually boil down to something Matt Casey taught her in a poignant exchange in one of their last episodes before the big departure. In this scene, Sylvie explained to him that things at her current job were very different from her last, and noted that their co-workers at Firehouse 51 always tended to do more for their victims and praise their dedication. Brett talked about how Casey always went the extra mile to help people, and that helped put things into perspective for Sylvie. Killmer said of the talk that she found it interesting that even though Sylvie was at a kind of crossroads with having to make her decision of whether to move with Casey or stay and dedicate herself to paramedicine, it was Casey's example that ended up convincing her to stay where she was. She stated, quote, "The reason that she stays is really because of the influence of Casey, because he's the one who has led by example time and time again, that you follow through," end quote. Essentially, it'd be betraying that example to leave those that need her aid in Chicago. That's a bit of a bittersweet way to think of things, but definitely touching in its own way. So what has Jesse Spencer Spencer done since leaving the show. It was broken by Distractify in May that Spencer would be starring in a very unique venture, an 8-episode series on Disney Plus that's called Last Days of the Space Age. The show will be set in 1979 and will feature 3 families living in Western Australia and experiencing, well, you know, the last days of the space age, the period where the world had a very idyllic view of the future, and in particular the kind of technology that we'd have by 2022. The town is preparing to host the Miss Universe pageant when a U.S. space station crashes nearby, and a power strike puts the town at risk of a blackout. Bit of an aside here, but as an Earthling, you gotta love the Miss Universe pageants. We win every year. At the moment, Disney Plus hasn't announced the air date for this show. Spencer also made a bit of a surprise return for another show that he had a lengthy tenure on, the Australian soap opera called Neighbours. This is a very long-running show, having been airing regularly since 1985, and has since consisted of, wait, is this seriously right? 8,903 episodes. Wow. Okay, Jesse debuted for the show way back in 1994, when he was merely a teenager. He was with them for 6 years before making his leave, but made his return for a brief cameo in the long-awaited series finale, which aired in July of this year. So hey, now that it's wrapped up, this seems like a wonderful time to marathon the series. Shouldn't be too bad, they're just the standard 22-minute episodes. So let's see, multiply that by 8,903, and it comes to, yes, 3,264 and a half hours. So you know, if you ever wanted to set aside 4.5 straight months to watch through a show, I think that's a fine choice. Any other Chicago Fire news out there right now? At the moment, we're all reeling from the latest episode of the show, which aired on October 5th, 2022. The name of the ep is Completely Shattered. And yeah, that's a pretty accurate description of how everyone's feeling after seeing it. Quick spoiler warning just in case you missed it, since we are talking about an episode that pretty much just aired at the time of writing. At the conclusion of this season 11 episode, we all bore witness to the tragic death of paramedic field chief Evan Hawkins. In the episode, Firehouse 51 is called to the scene of a 4-alarm movie theater fire. There, Hawkins attempted to rescue a man who was trapped under debris, only to be caught beneath an avalanche of it himself. His love interest Violet tried her very best to save him from the wreckage, but sadly, he was gone. Jemmy Nicholas, the actor who played Evan Hawkins, took to social media afterward to console his fans. He told them to take deep breaths and that they'd all push through it together. He, of course, also thanked the fans for their outpouring of love and support following the episode, stating that he's feeling sincerely spoiled and incredibly grateful. Currently, season 11 is still far from over, and like every other season of the show so far, is set to return from the fall of this year to the spring of the next. And that is all the time we have for today's video. Were you sad to see Matt Casey leave and hope that he'll one day become a regular cast member again? Or were you pleased to see the development and feel that he had little left to do on the show after 10 seasons? Do you perhaps think Sylvie Brett leaving along with him would have been a better resolution, sad as it'd be to lose them both? Be sure to let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And until next time, thanks for watching.